if for 1 minute this day I fully believed that prayer worked, what would I do in that minute?
Yeah.
If only for 1 minute I was fully convinced
dude.
God will answer this prayer, what would I pray in that minute? Start there.
I think since I've been a preacher, I have heard Christians tell me that they struggle in their prayer life. What are some of the biggest reasons why Christians struggle in their prayer life? What would you say is the first one?
First reason that comes to mind is I think a lot of people are uncertain about prayer. Mm-hmm. And it seems kind of like maybe a unknown field to them. And so when you're wading into something where there's unknowns, you're maybe uncomfortable, I think that can cause some hesitation or trepidation about prayer.
What do you mean? Like, what's like uncertain or unknown? Like, people don't understand how it works, or?
I think sometimes we don't realize prayer is not a natural act. In one sense, it is.
Yeah.
There's a scene maybe in a hospital room where someone who's never prayed before is all of a sudden crying out to a higher power or God. And so in some ways, prayer can be this like instinctive thing that I think is actually evidence in us of a sense of something transcendent, of something more than this natural world that we're crying out to. But when we think about daily prayer and what we call a prayer life of like day to day praying and talking to God, having conversations with God, and understanding those things, I think there's a lot of people have uncertainty about that. Of thinking that's supposed to come naturally to me, and then you sit down and you're like, what do I say? And how do I say it? How am I supposed to talk to God? And a lot of times people revert just to prayers they've heard in public of, well, this is how, this person, I heard them pray. And so a lot of prayers will kind of fall into the two formulas of prayers before meals and prayers before sleep. And it's like that's kind of all people know how to pray. And they say the same things every time. And it's because we don't always realize prayer is something that has to be taught and learned.
Yeah.
In Luke 11, verse 1, after Jesus finished praying, the disciples come to Jesus and say, Lord, teach us to pray. And so prayer is something that is taught and learned. It's not something that comes naturally to us.
Yeah, there's two sides to that because, I remember there was a guy that I knew who once said, you can't teach prayer because you can't criticize prayer. There's no way that someone could pray wrong. And I remember hearing someone say that and going, dude, like, Jesus literally said, when you pray, don't pray like these guys.
Yeah.
There's literally, obviously wrong ways to pray. And at the same time, I remember I had a moment where I realized, like, it is weird. Like, it is a weird thing. Me as an ant, as a human, I just get to talk to God. Like, that's kind of a crazy thing in terms of just the bigness of that. That's huge. You get to talk to God and he hears you.
It's like there's no other, like, dignitary that we can just talk to. Anytime. Like, imagine having the president, just on 24/7 on a line where anytime you were driving in your car and you could just line into the president and talk to him, or line in, go to ancient times. No peasant could just randomly just talk to the king just because they wanted to or felt like it.
Or, like, I was trying to get a certain preacher's phone number that I really look up to. And it was a big deal to me to just have contact with this guy. I texted with him. That's crazy to me. It's so cool.
Right. And so whenever we talk to people, like if you ever get a chance to meet a celebrity or a singer or an actor, you probably aren't sure, like, what am I going to say?
I practice.
And you practice. Yeah. There's a lot of uncertainty about it. And I don't think we always realize the amount of uncertainty we feel about prayer. And so we fall back on these formulas or the same words and phrases because we aren't actually sure how to talk to God. Yeah. And it's a biblical problem. Romans 8 and verse 26 says, we do not know how to pray for what to pray for as we ought. And so he's calling attention there to, there is a situation in time when we don't know what to pray for.
How do you alleviate the concern of that person that says, like, I just don't know what I'm doing here?
I think you go back to where the disciples began, asking Jesus, teach us to pray. And what Jesus did, which is so interesting, is he gave them a prayer to say. Yeah. And so we call it the model prayer. Probably most people are more familiar with the version from Matthew chapter 6 and the Sermon on the Mount. But Luke 11, he gives a very similar prayer and says, when you pray, say. And I think that shows us one thing, that is the only way to learn to pray is by praying.
Yeah.
Like you learn by practice. That's how you learn any habit or skill, is by practicing. And so it doesn't mean you're going to be perfect. It means you're going to stumble sometimes in your words when you're talking to God. And that's okay, you are learning to pray. And so Jesus gave them a prayer to say and basically modeled for them, these are the kinds of things to pray about, the kinds of things to include. And so I know, a lot of people might have issue with that of, are we supposed to just repeat that prayer and say that over and over again? And we don't see the disciples doing that in the rest of the New Testament. We see them praying different prayers and different things. But sometimes we skip that elementary stage where he said, here's where you start. You start by repeating this prayer. Start by learning the basics of what you're asking for, what you're saying to God, how you're thinking about God when you pray. And so that's where most Christians who are uncertain should begin, is this is how Jesus guided us to pray. You move from that to, well, it's not just the food that we eat, but it's also the other provisions that we have, our homes, shelter, clothing. There are other things we can be thankful for day by day. And so it really teaches you this framework in which to pray. It's not necessarily always repeat this, but that's really where you start, is by learning, here's what Jesus taught us to pray.
That's good stuff. All right, what else? Why do Christians struggle in their prayer lives?
Second reason I would say Christians struggle with prayer is because we are busy. And we are too busy to pray. That's probably the one I hear as much as anything else when I talk about prayer or teach prayer. And also, that's the one I've heard from myself. Is I would love to pray like I see Paul saying, pray without ceasing. And Paul saying, I'm remembering you day and night in my prayers. And it's like, I feel like I don't have time to remember one church day and night in my prayers. I barely remember myself day and night in prayers. And so it's this struggle of busyness that can keep us from having the prayer life we should.
Just to give you an example, recently I had a college student, Christian, church his whole life, text me and say, Marco, I need your help. How do I pray more? What do you mean, how do you pray more? And he wasn't saying like I literally can't speak words, but he was saying my life is just so busy, I don't even think to pray because there's so much on my mind. I'm doing stuff, and then I don't realize all the time that I'm wasting. Like when I'm wasting time, I don't even think about praying. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yes, it's this busyness where, especially in modern Western culture, we've filled so much of our time. And that's not to say that other times and cultures haven't been busy and productive and working, but what's the number one thing you do in your downtime? Where do you go? There's a little glowing rectangle in your pocket. And that's where most people go in their downtime, is
scrolling.
We fill our empty time with scrolling, with social media, with video games, whatever it may be. And we have so many things in now modern times that just fill our time up, where now we say, I don't have time. And it's not because we have less time than anyone else. It's because we don't realize how much time we may be wasting in different ways. Henry Nouwen says that the two greatest threats to the spiritual life are worry and busyness. And I don't know if I would always think of it that way, but I think he's onto something. Of how much of Christianity depends on trusting God and giving God time and space in our lives to God.
The time element is so interesting to me because there's this quote from Blaise Pascal: the sole cause of man's problems is that he does not know how to sit in his room alone, or something like that. It's a version of that. Like whenever we do have a quiet moment, we instantly go, ooh, it's quiet, that's weird, and then we go to the distractions. No wonder we're not praying. Like we're intentionally distracting ourselves all day long.
Right. And most people have time to pray. And it might be combining with other things they do. One thing I've started doing is praying in my drive time to work each morning. Is while I'm on the road, I'm focusing on driving, but while I'm focusing on driving, the same as if there was someone, sitting in the car next to me that I could talk to, I can talk to God and be talking about, plans for the day, including God and what I'm trying to do, praying for things that I need, remembering people. When I drive to worship where I preach, then I'm going to be praying for people who are there that I know need my prayers, because that's a time that's just built into my day.
That's a good idea.
Where I can use it that way. And there are other times like that. When you just lay down to go to sleep. The Bible, basically, the Bible and Jewish history and church history has predominantly pushed forward this idea of 3 times a day prayer, of this rhythm of morning, midday, evening praying. And so that's in Psalm 55, around verse 16, I think, of this idea of evening and at noon and in the morning I pray. And we see Daniel, his rhythm of praying 3 times a day. And that's just a well-testified practice throughout most of church history of, in the morning, you wake up, putting your mind toward God first thing. In the evening, before you go to sleep, putting your mind to God the last thing. And in the midday, in the course of all your activities, even if it's just a moment or a minute or 5 minutes, pausing from the day. Psalm 46 says, be still and know that I am God. When we're dealing with busyness and that is a problem, it starts with stillness.
Yeah.
It starts with slowing down, pausing even for just a moment, putting our minds to God, even if we're not even saying as much, but taking the time to think about God, to contemplate, to adore. That's part of prayer, and then also to pray.
So it'll help your prayer life if you learn to embrace the silence. You learn to embrace the quiet that makes your mind start to go, okay, like it's kind of like in the silence, you almost like snap out of it. All this, like the hustle and bustle, the scrolling, the stimulation on your eyes, you snap out of it and you go, okay, like what actually matters now? And I think the fact that we're scared of that is why we avoid it so much. And then we avoid it, we don't think to pray. And it's this terrible, terrible cycle. So your practical advice is like, be like, I guess, mentally directional throughout your day. If I'm going to drive to go worship, then I should pray about that. If I'm going to go drive to work, then I should just pray maybe general in my life. Like David in Psalm 4, Psalm 5, right? I meditate on you in the night watches, right? To constantly try to remind yourself what matters the most, to be like focused on those things. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. I think also some Christians maybe look at models of like, this incredible spiritual maturity that people in history or people today have of, this person prayed 3 hours in the morning or something like that. And some people think they have to start there.
Yeah.
And you don't.
Yeah.
It could be a minute in the morning, a minute midday, and a minute at night.
Yeah.
And everybody has those minutes that are just wasted where you could just be thinking about God and praying.
Yeah. I love that.
It's just about redeeming the time, which is a biblical concept, Ephesians 5:16.
Start easy, start there. And with that, number 3.
Third reason I think people might struggle to pray.
That was a clip from my conversation with Caleb Griffith of the Brown Trail School of Preaching. If you're a member of the church and are interested in training to preach, the school link is in the description. If you want to see the full conversation, it's on Patreon. The link is in the description as well. I still don't have a voice yet, so Grok is doing this outro for me. Tell Grok he did a good job by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and leaving a comment. Why do you think Christians struggle in their prayer lives? Maybe I'll do a video about it. I love you all and hope to talk to you soon. God bless you and goodbye.